Hello, ARC family. Welcome to the ARC journey and happy 4th of July. We are going to do a little history today, remembering where we have come from. So I'm looking at Toby Mack and Michael Tate's Under God with Wall Builders. And I'm looking at the Holy Experiment with William Penn. I'm going to read some excerpts from that. So William Penn, 37 years old, saw the rarest of opportunities to attempt something amazing. Owned a familial debt by the crown, Penn received a charter from King Charles for an expanse of land between the established colonies of New York and Maryland. In this sylvan spread of oak, maple, birch, and elm, Penn forswore to carry out a holy experiment, establishing a model state built on the principles of godliness, tolerance, and liberty. Pennsylvania was conceived with nearly unattainable expectations, unattainable, that is, without divine favor. The morning of September 3rd, 1682, broke with all the subtlety of a blacksmith's forge. To the east, the sun rose, molten and fierce, as Penn stood starboard on his passage across the Atlantic to finally see the land he'd received a charter for over a year ago. Salt spray stung his face, and through the cool wind, though the cool wind should have been bracing, he yawned despite himself. He stayed up late that evening, penning a response to a friend who inquired to his motives with the colony. The words still remained with him. For my country, I eyed the Lord in the obtaining of it, and for more was I drawn inward to look to him and to owe it to his hand and power than to any other. I have so obtained it and desire that I may not be unworthy of his love, but do that which may answer his kind providence and serve his truth and people, that an example may be set forth up to the nations. There may be room there, though not here, for such an holy experiment. You can only imagine his friend's reply: a Quaker serving as a governor of an entire colony. What folly! Penn chuckled to himself. It was an absurdity. And yet William knew, despite being so drawn to the teachings of the Friends or Quakers, that he'd never be the truest disciple or their model adherent. He'd come to the Friends through a message he'd heard delivered by Thomas Lowe. At home, unexpectedly at his father's estate in Ireland in 1665, Penn heard the words that would become his guiding principle in life. There is faith that overcometh the world, and there is faith that is overcome by the world. It was a paradoxically strong message to have been preached by the fundamentally meek Quaker, and Penn saw the transcendent power of life, of living a life of submission to God's will in sacrifice, gentleness, and humility. The practice of such a life proved much more difficult. It's like watching a lion playing at being a dormouse, a friend teased, and Penn's prowling nature soon found ample room to roam. The Act of Uniformity, passed by Parliament in 1662, established Anglicanism as the religion of the land and made a gathering of more than 5 people of any faith illegal and subject to disbanding by force. The Quakers chose to continue meeting and were often fined or even imprisoned for their lawlessness. But where the Friends often bore their punishments in humble acceptance, Penn would not be silenced. His words, his writings, such as the sandy foundation shaken, and his unceasing efforts to worship as God led, landed him time and again in prison. Time he used merely to further hone his religious and political sensibilities in works like No Cross, No Crown, a text replete with calls to honest, unfettered faith. And if they couldn't silence me in the Tower of London, they thought best to place the wide Atlantic between us, Penn noted dryly, his sleepiness finally sloughing off. Terns and gulls called about the mass far above, and for a few minutes he watched transfixed as a pod of purposes dove and danced with playful grace, racing the ship as she rushed to the New World. The 1682 trip was the first of 2 voyages he made the colony governed, the second taken in 1699. Even then, he was well at work on the frames of government, the founding document that would rest at the heart of Pennsylvania's developing constitution and serve as a template for the expression of all the colonists and founding fathers' purest dreams. Governments, like clocks, go from the motion men give them. And as governments are made and moved by men, so by them they are ruined too. Let men be good, and the government cannot be bad. And if it will be ill, they will cure it. He would never spend as much time in America as he wanted, only 4 years in the 2 trips. But in his time, he accomplished much. He purchased land for his estate from the Lane Lepe Indians and signed a treaty of friendship with the Delaware Indians. On his second return, he freed all of his slaves at his estate, allowing them to remain as tenants on the land. And his frames of government offered a strong beginning for the freedom of speech and religion, the right to self-government that will continue to be valued so highly in the coming push towards independence. It is not just the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution that call on the name of the Almighty for divine guidance in governing the nation. In fact, the preambles, or in some cases, the first chapter, part, or article to the constitutions from every state in the Union include similar acknowledgments. This is true for the first state in the Union, Delaware, through divine goodness. All men have by nature the rights of worshiping and serving their Creator according to the dictates of their conscience. It's true for the last state admitted to the Union, Hawaii. We, the people of Hawaii, grateful for divine guidance, do hereby ordain and establish this Constitution for the state of Hawaii. For the upper Pacific West, Washington, we, the people of the State of the Union, grateful to the supreme ruler of the divine universe for our liberties, do ordain this Constitution. The deep Atlantic South, Florida, we, the people of the state of Florida, being grateful to Almighty God for our constitutional liberty, do ordain and establish this Constitution. And the geographic center of the country, Kansas. We, the people of Kansas, grateful to Almighty God for our civil and religious privileges in order to ensure the full enjoyment of our rights as American citizens, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the state of Kansas. Every state in the country that you set foot in has at its core a recognition of the importance of God in daily life, and especially in the decisions that will govern us as people. From Maine to California, Minnesota to Louisiana, we are truly a nation under God. As you celebrate with your congregation, as you celebrate with your families, remember the cost that has been paid for our freedom. And that great cost was paid by Jesus. So happy 4th, happy celebration, enjoy. And just to jump into history. Bye-bye.